Welcome to Saturday versus Sunday. I'm John Barbin. With me is Jeff Dover in studio, and let's talk football.
Let's talk football together in studio. The reason why we're doing this is because we're so excited for the start of the football season, the real football season, which is not this NFL preseason stuff, but it's college games. We're going to be watching them live tomorrow together. We're going to do some review pods, so come check that out later for the Saturday versus Sunday for our college also preview for week 1, but also our review for week 0, which is going to start this week. I can't wait for Iowa State, Kansas State. But the reason why we're talking today is because we're watching the NFL preseason games yesterday, and we're really struck by the difference this year between starters playing and starters not playing for some teams.
Right. And the question is, I guess McVay popularized this with the Rams.
Yeah.
And since it kind of, I guess, worked and they won the Super Bowl, the NFL is largely a copycat league. Coaches borrow from other coaches when they see something work. And he kind of, I guess, at least set some kind of precedent that you don't necessarily need to start any of the starters in the preseason, and it doesn't seem to affect the potential outcome of making it all the way.
Yeah. So historically, starters would play in the preseason and just less as the games got close to the regular season. And then that year, his starters pretty much didn't play any of it. And they went to the Super Bowl that year. They were healthy. And some people attributed it to not getting beat up in the preseason, and you didn't lose anyone important in sort of major injuries or something.
Yeah.
Just like how Slater was just injured, right, for the Chargers, the left tackle, right? So, and that happened.
That's the other side of this story.
So you don't have any season-ending injuries that happen in the preseason. And so that's the better way to go. That's sort of what and at the time that was different than what other teams are doing. But something else we've noticed is that some teams, including the Rams the last couple of years, and the Bengals, start slow, like 1-3, 2-4, something like that, and it doesn't seem like they play way better later in season than they do in the beginning. And is that because they're not practicing enough before the season starts?
Right. So the question is a preseason rep close enough to an in-season rep that it actually gets you prepared? And is it worth the potential risk? Like, as you just mentioned, Slater is done for the season. That's the starting left tackle on the Chargers. Now, in hindsight, the Chargers could think, well, what the hell were we starting him for? But you can't know that. There's always a risk. I mean, lots of guys have torn ACLs this year in preseason training camp, not even in a preseason game. So, Jeff, you were bringing it up. An exposure, just the number of hours you're on the field, increases the chance of getting an injury. It's a violent sport. Some of these are even non-contact injuries. Just a couple games ago, guy tore his ACL on a non-contact play. He was just twisting.
Yeah. So they, in general, for the epidemiology stuff, they split it into 2 categories: contact and non-contact injuries. And there's a different injury rate for both. And the way they calculate that, they do it per exposure. So like 1 hour of practice would count as like 1 hour of game would count as 1 exposure.
Right.
So like an injury rate in football would be like 187 out of 100,000 exposures or something.
Yeah.
So technically, the more you play, the higher chance there is that you'd get injured, right? Which makes sense, because if you just weren't, it's the same in car accidents. If you never got in a car, you would never get in an accident. If you drove 24 hours a day, the chance of you getting an accident is higher. So it's the same. So there's no way of eliminating getting injured in football, because by definition, it's a violent sport, and the more you play, the will. But then you have to balance that to the training effect of doing live reps in game. And so you've got a lot of experience with the strength conditioning stuff.
Yeah.
It does a Phi Life podcast. If you haven't checked that out, you guys should check that out. And so, based on that periodization and getting ready for training, like if you were the GM of an NFL team, what would you have your players do in the preseason?
It's not fair. I think it comes down to the situation your team is in and how it's been going. So in the Bengals case, it's looked so bad for so many years in a row here, where they get off to an awfully slow start. I see why they want to be on the field. Now, players always want to be on the field.
Yes.
The starters would, if you let them choose, they'd play all the preseason games. They just want to play, and they want to get full speed reps.
Maybe not Aaron Rodgers, but probably everyone else.
Okay, maybe not Rodgers, but most of the ones in their prime, let's say, don't want to shy away from a rep. They want that rep, and especially a rep against another team and not their own team. So there's something to be said for training at the true speed of the game. So training camp is one speed against your own team. Then there's another speed in training camp when you do the joint practices against the other team. I'd say that's a bit quicker because now you're against the other team. And then preseason games is another speed, but that's still not the fastest because you're still not always up against the starters. When you're in a live game, live bullets, game matters, that's the true NFL speed. And then you could even say there's another, the final top speed is against elite Hall of Fame caliber players.
Well, I thought you were going to say playoffs. Because I think
so that's an even faster speed.
Okay.
But now you're really concentrating it down on the you're only really up against the very, very best players in the playoffs.
Right. Okay.
But there's a difference between going up against the twos, even in a preseason game, versus the ones. Like there's a big difference if Myles Garrett is coming off the edge or whoever his backup is coming off the edge.
And if that's in a practice or in a game.
Because in a practice, preseason game, or regular season, like you don't really know if they're putting in the full effort, right? Now the backups probably are because they're trying to make the team, but that isn't Myles Garrett. That's a backup who just does not have his skill. Yeah. So I guess the idea is you want to train as close to true game speed as possible to simulate the true game. But the trick is you can't simulate the true game because not every team even has a player like a Garrett or a Crosby. Just as one example of someone who you don't see that until you see him. Yeah. There's no way to simulate it. Also, the other thing I'll say is training camp, it's two-hand touch on the QB. It's not live bullets.
Oh, that's a good point.
So the QB can hang in there as long as he wants. He knows he's not going to get hit. He can take risks that he just knows he's not going to get hit. So his psychology of how he chooses to play or
the pressure on the decision-making
totally
isn't the same.
No. Yeah. And then in a preseason game, that's where I think the biggest jump would be is now you can hit the quarterback.
Yep.
And the other team's coach is not going to say, well, that's Lamar Jackson on the other side of the field. So, just to be polite, we're all in a players union. No, those guys are trying to make the team.
Yep.
Now, they don't want to injure that guy, but they, in an effort to make the team, some guy who's maybe just signed a low draft pick or just signed an undrafted free agent, he has a chance to sack one of the best players. He's gonna.
Absolutely.
So that you are increasing the exposure, you're increasing the risk, but it's still, I would say it's still not quite game speed. So this is a long-winded way of saying I'd want them to get some reps.
Yeah.
But it's situational. If the team's been coming out of the gates with very minimal reps each year, playing fine, leave it. But and don't bother. Like the Bills aren't playing Josh Allen, but the Bengals are. But that also could be the psychology of the player himself. Like someone like Burrow might say, give me some more reps. Like, I just need to feel this before we start the season.
Yeah.
And then it's probably just a joint decision, but you can't bubble wrap these guys.
No.
Like, people are going to get injured.
Yeah.
And they can even get injured in training camp. So what do you just never don't do anything until it's the very first game and then you show up totally deconditioned? So yeah, I think that's why it's situational.
Yeah,
it's a BS cop-out answer, but it's situational.
No, I think you're right. I think you'd have to be tailored to the team. Yeah. Okay, so if you've had slow starts, if you have more veteran people, that's one thing. Like, I think Burrow needing to improve his timing with Chase is not critical because I think they have that,
No.
So if they don't have live reps in the preseason, that's okay. Josh Allen's an interesting point because that was the point last year that, who's going to be, do they have like I don't want to make fun of any of the Bills players, but they don't have necessarily a difference maker and an all-pro wide receiver or
they don't have like
something like that. No, they don't have a Jamar. So and as Josh Allen always famously said last year too, is like everyone eats in this offense, right? So I would argue in that type of scenario, it'd be more important for him to get live bullets with like new people, younger people, like people he hasn't had as much relationship with, and that would be important for them to hit the ground running at the beginning. But no, I think that's a good point. It's that sitting in the pocket, having to make the decision, knowing you're going to get hit is an important characteristic for a QB. And I think that's part of the reason why you don't want them to get injured in the preseason, but they have to experience something like that. I don't think you can go from zero to first game. And here, you mentioned this before too. So one of the thoughts is that if everyone does this, right? So it's all of our backups. No one's going to play the starter. Every team in game one is at the same place, and that's true. But but this year it's not going to be true because some people have played starters, some haven't. And the argument I would push back on that is that if I'm the GM or the coach, game one is just as important as game 17. Like it's the separating between you hosting a playoff game or not, or you making the playoffs or not, like 9-7. It doesn't matter if it's like, oh, those wins came earlier or those wins came later. Like week 1 win is just as important as week 17 win. So if our goal is to be as competitive as we can each game, then not playing the starters before week 1 doesn't help that.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to if there's enough data over time, and they can show that the injury risk is just too much versus any benefit.
Yeah.
Like if the entire league pulls the data together, I don't know if they would even share this. Maybe
they do.
And then you could just decide, it seems that it trends towards getting out of the gates faster if you let your starters play a few more series in preseason than not. If that becomes like a consistent trend,
like a performance thing.
Like a performance, not the injury thing. The injury thing we know.
Yes.
But the performance thing we kind of don't know yet.
Yeah, no.
So
it's really hard to measure performance like across teams because
that's what I'm saying.
Because it's like if you're playing a really good team or not would affect it. If it's raining or not would affect it. Like if you're
or a couple of teams we know come out of the gates with 3 division games in a row.
Yeah, exactly. So like that's really hard. But I thought you were talking about the injury part. That was they've done. That's part of the NFL's thing to improve player safety.
Yeah.
And they keep track of all the injuries, when they happen, where and stuff. And that's why they made the kickoff change rules, right? So there was a lot of injuries that were happening in the kickoff. And so that's why they changed it where you can't run until the person catches it and stuff. And the injury rates have gone down significantly in that play without, changing the game significantly is what they would say. Because that's the only other option. In order to change the injury rate, especially for a QB, we've been harping on the QB a lot. This is every position in the NFL. Like it sucks for the Chargers to lose their left tackle and things like that. But you really notice it if it's at the QB, right? Wasn't that like 2 years ago where a couple was Mahomes and it was like 2 or 3 starting QBs were injured, and you're like, it's really affecting the NFL. Like, are people going to tune in less because?
It would be. I mean, this whole thing would be a much larger debate if a guy like Burrow or Jackson or whoever, did Jackson get any preseason reps? If a guy like that blew his ACL out in preseason, that would really stimulate a debate because the marketability of the entire league revolves around your star QBs. Because for no other, everyone knows this, the QB's impact on the game is disproportionately bigger than every other player, but a left tackle isn't too far behind. That really, to me, that fundamentally changes the Chargers' entire season.
Yeah, but so to get back to the changing for the rule, so like the kickoff thing was changed in order to prevent the injury. So if we change the rule for the preseason, saying like you can't tackle the QB, right? That would be one way of limiting
conditioning him into live
and
reps,
that was
matter.
Right. So that was your point, was that then it's really no different than practice, and is that really helping anything? So according to the internet, no, Lamar Jackson is not playing the 2025 preseason. That's the strategy to rest him. So
right. So I guess it's really just situational. It's each team's risk tolerance there, and like we said, the equation. That more exposure for sure increases injury risk. That's just a straight linear relationship. The more you're on the field, the more you can get hurt. Even if you don't hit the QB, he can, like, these guys have torn their Achilles tendons, like Rodgers and Cousins, without even getting hit. They just take a step and it tears. So just being on the field, going at as whatever you think game speed is, increases the risk of injury. But the other side of the equation that we don't know and we don't have good data on is how much better do you perform during the season if you do take preseason reps. That's not really well understood.
No, and it's impossible to measure that.
You only know the increase in the negative, but you don't know any potential increase in the positive by putting people. So when you look at it that way, the only logical conclusion is, well, don't increase the risk of the negative if we can't guarantee the positive.
Yep. No, that's a good point. And and just the last thing about the division game and stuff, that's Cleveland or Cincinnati this year starts at Cleveland, the division game, first one of the season, right? So that's going to be a really important.
Myles Garrett, you can't simulate that speed. And they don't have Hendrickson to even attempt to simulate it in practice.
Yeah.
So there's no way to simulate how fast that guy's going to be coming off the edge.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
So a guy like Burrow might psychologically. So this will be the final point. Maybe just psychologically, Burrow doesn't like the idea of starting the season with probably the best edge rusher all game long, dealing with that kind of speed, and he hasn't seen that speed since last season.
Okay.
So maybe he wants a few preseason reps to even kind of get close to something other than practice speed. Because it's going to be night and day when Garrett is coming after him for 3 hours.
Well, and I think sure, and if we're taking if the game now is playing what Joe Burrow is thinking, my vote would be on he knows they've started slow the last couple of years. He knows that he really doesn't want to start slow again this year. And so as a leader of the team, he's going out there, I'm playing preseason, I'm playing hard now, so that to set the tone that like game one is really important. Not that people maybe didn't feel like it wasn't important last year, but like this is going to me, this raises it up like, okay, now this is serious and I don't know.
Yeah, he's trying to lead by example.
Yeah, exactly.
In his last game, he probably did too much. He's definitely put himself in harm's way. I mean, the announcers were like, Jesus Christ, get him off the field.
Yeah, but just having him out there, it's I think would send that message, and it's important because that game's important.
If anything, that actually might be the answer. It's to send a message to your own team more than maybe even getting any kind of rep at any kind of speed.
Yeah, and then players talk about that, like when the QB, like when he throws interception and he tackles a guy, or like. The QB every now and then like lowers his head and like takes on a hit to try and get that extra couple of yards. That fires the team up, So when people put themselves out there, it absolutely does send a message. So
in the end, I think it's situational. In this particular case, Burrow, I'm sure Burrow has pressed for that. I doubt the management's forcing him to. I'm sure he's like, no, I want to be out there. I want to set an example. We just cannot afford to come out of the gate slow this year.
Yeah, I hope so. I like to think so. And it's the only other thing I'll say about the preseason, because we talked about this off air, it's surprising. It's really hard to make in the NFL. We've talked about that before. It's a really good, really high talent level. Surprised still how sloppy it is in the preseason, like how many penalties there are in the false start. And I get that there's a lot of personnel and you're cycling second and third strings in there, but the second and third strings are still really talented people. And so I'm just surprised at how some of the games are unwatchable to me because
they were all the very best in college. That's how they even got here in the first place.
Yeah.
And just yesterday we were watching the Giants and Jalen Hyatt, 3 or 4 passes hit him right in the chest.
That's a great example.
And he dropped all of them. And he's in his 3rd year now.
Yeah.
And it's like obvious. I mean, if you ever saw him at Tennessee, he didn't drop anything.
No.
He was like one of the most unstoppable receivers in the country.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's nerves or what it is. And then here, multiple years into the pros, he's still dropping passes all over the place.
Yeah. No, and that's super frustrating. If you're a Giants fan, that'd be super frustrating. You'd be looking at the wide receiver, why can't you catch the ball? And right. And so it's surprising how frustrating it is to watch it. That's why we're super excited for the college to start tomorrow and watch real games, even though it's Iowa State, Kansas State, and Dublin. I want to watch that 1,000 times more than the Eagles-Jets game that's on later today. So.
Oh, yeah. All right, well, I don't know if we've really answered anything. I just think it's situational whether or not a starter should be in the games or for how long.
I think they have to play some. That's my answer. Is they have to play elite. I believe they have to play some, and if someone gets injured, that sucks. That's no different if they get injured in the first game in the week 3 or so, it's the same. The odds are the same.
Yeah. The other argument is if he was going to get hurt, it didn't matter if it was a preseason game or regular season, he was still going to get hurt.
I mean, it is still the only other option is not getting in the car. If you don't want to get in a car accident, never get in the car. That's the only answer. Yeah. And so there's just no way of doing that. Football is a violent sport.
This is the same thing. Do you rest your starters when your final game of the season can't change your playoff position?
That I feel like is a completely different question.
Oh, okay, so it's not the same question because everyone's banged up.
No, exactly. So that is more of a load thing, right? Yeah. So if you've played 16 weeks and you're bumped, there's bumps and bruises, there's things that are never got a chance to heal, never fully got no one is 100% at that part.
Yeah.
So that is different, and you've in terms of timing and coordination, you've had 16 games to do it. So it's not like so that I fully support not starting the starters in like week 17 if you don't need to, because it's completely different than the start of the season.
Fully agree with that because everyone's injured by that point of the season. But there is also the take that 2 weeks off, actually, you may show up not ready.
Yeah.
Because there is a rhythm to it.
You're right. Oh,
like there is like the weekly rhythm and then you take 2 weeks. I know there's bye weeks and stuff like that, but now you're supposed to be ramping into your maximum intensity.
Yes.
So you could, one of the theories I've read is you've killed some of that momentum and some of that intensity, whereas the other team is showing up I don't want to say battle hardened, but they're just in the rhythm,
Right.
because they had to keep playing and you didn't.
Yeah.
It's also like, is the bye worth it?
Yeah. So I agree. So that would be more scenario based. So let's say it was like the Chiefs last year. Okay. So the last regular season game didn't mean anything because they're going to finish first no matter what.
Right.
And they're getting a bye. Right, for the first week. So now that I'm with you now, right? Because that technically would be like 3 weeks of nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. So if that was the case, then I would treat it like one of the preseason games where Mahomes would do like the first drive or like that's it or something. Because then you like there's the same week practice, like you still practice hard the one day, it's still the walkthroughs the day before. And then you just do because that I always thought you're the exercise strengthening conditioning person, but like that to me matches up with the periodization more. If you're prepping for something, you don't go half weight, you go full weight, but half reps, right? Like that's when it, like that's the intensity is the same.
The volume goes down.
Right.
Yes.
So like that's why doing a drive in a last regular season game would be same intensity,
max intensity, lower volume,
but it's way less volume.
Reps.
Yeah.
Right.
So I agree with you. You don't want to do. And that was one of my last experiences when I was at Florida with the basketball team, where they had there was a stretch of a couple of games, and then they were playing a big game against Kansas, which because they're a really good basketball team, and it was on a neutral site. It was in Vegas. I'll never forget this. And they got blown out by Kansas. And they're sort of talking about like, why did this happen or whatever. And it was one of the staff members said, "Is like, I think we were detrained." And then they were like, "What?" And they looked at the 2 weeks prior to the game, and they had a lot of games in that time, so they took a lot of practices off. But the games were against like crappy teams, and so they blew them out, and so the starters didn't play the second half.
So the intensity was down as well.
Yes, and the frequency
for the starters.
So and you do that over 2 weeks, and then because then they got the doors, like Kansas outran them out of the gym. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that I think is like to your point where. If you have the last regular season game didn't matter, you have the bye in the NFL, and then you're getting ready. Like so that would be
it's different. Not like they're, it's a psychological thing too, as well as a physical thing. Yep. So you kind of,
I think that routine of like the heavy practice, the walkthrough, get up, pregame meal, do the drive, one drive, stop, like that feels way different than knowing I'm not playing Sunday,
right?
And then do the heavy practice, and you're like, that's it for me for this week, because now I'm just doing the walkthrough. Don't have to really have my crap together like that more. You know what I mean? Like that would feel really different. So
so I guess it's situational, but there's pros and cons on both sides. I think it's just going to be situational.
Yeah, and for the fan watching.
Oh, it doesn't change. The preseason's terrible. Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible. It's fun to watch the starter for a little bit, or any of the new rookies who might be the future players. That's fun to watch. But other than that,
and it's fascinating how much we don't like it, because we're college football fans. This is Saturday versus Sunday. We watch games on Saturday. We know a lot of the players that aren't on the team could make the team. You know what I mean? And even then, we still don't like watching it.
No, I don't know what it is, because like we watch enough college that we've seen every one of those players who are trying to make the team play at an elite level in college. Yeah. That's how they got there. And then you watch them fumbling around. They can't even line up, and they're offside, and they break the huddle with too many players. Like, what? Did these guys all forget how to play football? So maybe it's nerves. We talked about that before, but the preseason is. I mean, we're just starved for football at this point, so we watch it. But boy, I'm so glad college is actually here. So.
Planned our whole weekend around it. We're gonna be back here doing our week 1 preview for college, in our week 0 review together in studio. Because we're excited for football.
That's right.
That's what we do here.
That's right. That's a good place to leave this one.
Yep.
All right. So for Jeff Dover, I'm John Barban, and that's your Saturday versus Sunday podcast.